Welcome. It's time. It's time to drop in, open up, and receive. It's time to remember. It's time to believe. Let's elicit the beautiful, the good, and the true. It's time for me. It's time for you. Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to It's Time with Jillian Melissa. You guessed it, I am Jillian Melissa, and I am so honored that you are choosing to spend some time with me today. This podcast, this channel has been a long time coming, years in the making, and I feel so grateful that we're finally here in this moment. In the back, if you're tuning in visually, you will see Bubbles. That is my 3-month-old white lab. He'll be part of this experience because he wants to be here, and I feel guided to include him. So if you hear the occasional bark or puppy sound, know that that's Bubbles blessing us with his wisdom and his precocious energy. It's Time with Jillian Melissa aims to be a channel, a podcast where you can come and anchor into unconditional love, where you can feel met and seen. I hope to teach. I plan to bring on guests who have been important in my journey, in my spiritual development, my psychic awakening, my twin flame journey, my health journey, my psychological psychiatric journey, my physical healing journey. I spent a decade in a wheelchair. I've been through a lot of capital T traumas. I feel that radical healing is always available. Miracle consciousness is real. And I aim to share as much magic as I possibly can with you every time I show up. So thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being here. I hope that the emergent phenomenon of you tuning in is the beautiful, the good, and the true. The realization of your dreams, a sense of peace, safety, knowingness, bliss, and a trust in your own intuitive compass and flashlight, which is always trying to guide you home to your soul. So that having had been said, this first episode, I thought I would just introduce myself a bit more in terms of my psychic origin story. So many people ask me, how did I come to be a professional psychic medium, intuitive healer, guide, mentor, spiritual coach? The languaging varies based on who I'm talking to and how they see me. A consciousness counselor. I support people with inner child work, with shadow work. I do intuitive trainings where I teach people how to activate all of their clairs, their clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, how to remote view, astral travel, mediumship, channeling, all of these things, right? How did this come to be? So I thought I would share today, and hopefully me sharing my story evokes something in you, a remembrance, a curiosity. Yeah. So let's take a moment and drop in. Let's settle in. Of course, I invite you to ask your body if there's anything you need before you continue listening to this experience. So that's something that I always do with my clients. I often pause them in the middle of their stories, especially if they're ranting and really getting activated energetically, emotionally, especially if they're up in their mind looping. I know my energy is big. I can feel you too. I can feel those who are going to listen to this throughout space-time. So let's take a moment, drop in, and ask your body if there's anything you need. Maybe you want to grab your AirPods, or maybe you want some cozy socks or a cup of tea. Maybe you want to lie down. Really ask your body what you need, and I invite you to actually honor that. Actually honor the intelligence of your body. It's amazing how we are taught to neglect our bodies ever since, let's say elementary school, right? When you have to ask permission to go to the bathroom, and then some of the teachers might even say no, and you have to hold or feel uncomfortable. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had client sessions where the clients have wanted to go to the bathroom, but have felt fearful or like they're going to lose 90 seconds or 2 minutes of the session. And it's like, we can be human here. You can go to the bathroom, come back, and feel more comfortable. And I'm okay if we go an extra 90 seconds over. Anyway, so please listen to your body, and then I will jump in. So I have felt psychic for as long as I can remember. I grew up watching shows like Sabrina, Teenage Witch, and Alex Mack, where she would turn into a puddle of almost Capri Sun-like liquid and travel through the pipes. And I just thought all of that was so cool and also so real and so possible. I used to put my brother Jared in these trance-like states and travel him throughout space and time and lead him through these hypnotic journeys. After reading The Giver by Lois Lowry and hearing about how people could transmit or transmute energy and memories, I, in the backseat of my mom's car, would try to send colors or pictures to my friends. Like when we were carpooling to gymnastics or dance, we'd hold hands and I would try to send them a color or a picture, and often they would accurately perceive it. I also used those gifts and sensitivities in a bit of a manipulative way from a young age. I really did. And as most empaths know, trauma often heightens our gifts. And so I definitely experienced trauma at a young age, which I will talk about in other episodes. That's not for today. But I definitely found myself after those traumatic events around age 6 or so, really dialing up the intensity of my energetic attunement and seemingly walking on eggshells. And if I felt like I could read the room and predict and feel other people's energies, then maybe I could keep myself safe. I also got a yellow lab, or rather my mom got the family dog, Cody. And I think we were in 1st or 2nd grade when that happened. Maybe I was in 2nd grade. And Cody was my original pendulum. So I felt like I could really communicate with him even though he didn't speak English. And I attuned him similar to how people entrain a pendulum, which is, if you're not familiar, an intuitive tool that can be used in a variety of ways. But at the start of my psychic development journey, I was taught to use a pendulum to test yes and no. So I would hold a pendulum, ask a question, and then it would swing in one direction for yes, a different direction for no. And I would start to do blind readings because you can very easily influence that with your psyche. If you're asking the pendulum, should I go on this date tonight? And you really want to go and your ego is saying, yes, 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 of course it's going to swing in the yes direction. So what I would do is write down the different possibilities, like it's in my highest good to move to Miami. It's in my highest good to move to Santa Cruz, California. It's in my highest good to move to Sedona, Arizona. And then I would fold them up and mix them up. So I didn't know what I was testing, and then I would hold the pendulum over each piece of paper, and whichever one was the yes was how I was moving through the world at that time. But anyway, back to my childhood with Cody, I felt like I had trained him to lick my hand once for a yes and twice for a no. And I would ask him questions all the time about what to do. Should I go read The Hobbit on the staircase right now? Yes? Okay. And I would ask him more deep and profound questions as well. And I always felt like he guided me appropriately. There's something else to that, which, again, I will dive into in subsequent episodes of this channel around why was I so eager to give up my sovereignty? Why did I want to follow the leader? Why did it feel more peaceful for me to have somebody else tell me what to do, like my dog, rather than take ownership and make those co-creative, powerful choices? It's an interesting inquiry, something I also pose to a lot of my clients, especially people who come to me for intuitive readings and they just want me to channel for them and give them answers about their own life. Why do you want me to do that? Why don't you want to figure it out for yourself, right? So my intuition was alive as a child. I was very connected to the spirit realm. I also had a sense that animals and plants had feelings. I remember one time in our backyard, I snapped a branch off of a tree. I don't really remember why. I was just kind of being rowdy and fun. And then I saw that the branch, was broken, and I had one part of it in my hand, and then there was this like little stump, and I felt awful, and I started hysterically crying. And I was like, I hurt this. It's like if someone broke my arm, like I hurt the tree. And so I created a little cast out of twigs and leaves, and I tried to mend it, and I tied it together in a little bow. And I would go back to that tree and visit it every day and put my hands on it and say, I'm sorry. Something similar to, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, but not as eloquent and precise. but my own version of a prayer, and I would commune with that tree. I also remember at summer camp, I went to Camp Mattaponi in Naples, Maine, as many East Coast Jews do, and my first summer away from home, there was a daddy longlegs in the bunk, and one of the girls in bunk 7, or was it bunk 5? My first summer was bunk 5. Anyway, I don't think you care, but the Matta alums might care. And someone killed this daddy longlegs, and I was so upset, also started crying, and I wrote about it in my journal. I wrote, what if someone did that to me? What if there was another species that considered me like a spider, and one day they just stepped on me, and then I was gone? My family would be sad. What about the spider's family? And I still have that journal entry to this day. Now, unfortunately, I don't have quite the same affection for bugs and things that I did as a little girl, but I was really open to all aspects of creation. And I also really started to connect to the idea of a multiplicity of lives. I remember one day during recess, it was raining outside, so we were in the gym instead of outside per usual, and I was with my best friend Alex at the time, and I had my dream journal with me. Yes, I had a dream journal as a little girl. I was also keenly aware that our dreams were important. We needed to record them. I had some fascinating dreams as a kid. Perhaps I'll do an episode on dreams, but I'm trying to keep things streamlined today. And I started talking to Alex about how I think there are different levels to awareness and how we live, and then we die, but then we come back and we live, and there are lessons, and we're kind of climbing these ladders, and I'm not really sure what we're trying to get to, but I know that we repeat lessons. And anyway, she wound up telling the 2 hottest boys, a pair of twins, Jeff and Rob, if you guys are listening, hope you're well. And they made fun of me. Ooh, camera's shaking with that. They made fun of me. And that was the first moment where I really felt like maybe my view of the world, maybe my lens, people think is weird. Maybe they don't think it's cool. And I felt really ashamed. I think they even somehow got a hold of that journal or that page in the journal and passed it around. And the following year, I got really into magic. So like stage magic, illusions. My grandma Lee took me to a magic store, I think in West Orange, New Jersey, and got me a bunch of illusions, magic tricks, and I had a magic briefcase, and I brought them to school, and that was not a cool thing to do in Watchung, New Jersey. And people thought I was super weird. And again, I started to close up a little bit. I was keenly aware of the difference between illusion and stage magic and what I felt was real magic. So I also in 3rd grade wrote a poem called Real Magic, which I believe I can still recite. Let's see. Real magic happens each day. Caterpillars turn to butterflies and fly away. Leaves turn from green to a most vivid scene. Rain turns to snow, leaving the world all aglow. How does this happen? Do you think magic is fake? Because if you don't believe, you're making a mistake. And what was interesting from that moment on, my teacher, who was such a powerful mentor in my life, noticed that I was a really strong writer. And that, went in some literary publication in the state of New Jersey. And I got a lot of academic accolades. People started noticing that I was very smart. And so that spiritual attunement and energetic awareness started to contract within me, but the academic, logical, rational mind and the rule follower, frankly, was celebrated. And teachers started giving me extra work, or during reading time, they would hand me little algebra equations to solve. And I had some incredible teachers in school, so I'm forever blessed. I gave it one last shot to kind of show the world, look, I think this stuff is real. In 3rd grade, we had mini society at my elementary school. Everyone was given fake money, like Monopoly money, and we partnered up. We all established businesses, and then we got to shop at each other's businesses in the 3 different 3rd grade classrooms. And People sold ice cream sandwiches, there was mini golf, there were raffles, all sorts of whimsical, seemingly frivolous businesses, in my opinion. I thought they were all pretty frivolous. And then I was Miss Mysticism. And I read palms and did spiritual and psychic counseling in 3rd grade with my partner, Kristen. So clearly I had a deep knowing. But again, this was not celebrated. And in fact, it was mocked. And so in an attempt to fit in, I shut down my gifts. And I also really enjoyed being an academic superstar and being a genius and being a whiz kid. And so I leaned into that aspect of myself. So middle school, high school, I get into Harvard, early action, and I've honestly really forgotten about a lot of my intuitive gifts at this point. It's hard to rationalize a lot of this. It's hard to establish proof. And I had such a scientific mind. Over the summer, I went to, a governor's school for science. I interned at Columbia in these genetics labs and a cardiology lab. I was really rigorous in my study and my passion for academia. And so this whole intuitive, spiritual, energetic, empathic stuff felt a little woo-woo. And, where's the proof of concept? So I neglected it. Well, a few weeks after being accepted into Harvard and my dreams seemingly coming true, I became very ill. Very physically ill. My mother and I both got some sort of flu-like virus for about 2 weeks, high fever, all the classic symptoms. But then she started recovering and I did not. I was attending a very rigorous private high school, Pingree, and I was collapsing in the hallways. When I would go to the nurse or when they would find me in the hallways, white as a ghost, I was also a dancer, and I was skinny. So the first question was always, what have you eaten today? And they assumed that I had some sort of eating disorder. And I was like, well, started with a bagel with cream cheese. At lunch, I had pasta, chicken parm, maybe a lot of soft serve ice cream. They had a little soft serve machine. And then they were like, oh, okay, I guess she eats. But it was really challenging and frustrating and scary. And so my mother started taking me to all different doctors. We started in Manhattan because, as a Jersey girl, you often think the best of the best is in the city. And I got all sorts of diagnoses that to me were amorphous and really just an aggregate of symptoms, but not getting to any sort of underlying etiology of what's actually wrong. So at first I got chronic fatigue, immune deficiency syndrome, post-viral, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which has to do with, as you change your posture, you stand up, you collapse. Anyway, it was all really devastating for me. I was incredibly sick. I could barely stand. I was valedictorian of my class and was so excited about the speech I was writing, and I really wanted to deliver it, but I wasn't even certain that I'd be able to stand at the podium for, the 7 minutes or however long my speech was. I did. And then, I shriveled up in bed. I spent the summer mostly in bed or on the couch, and I got myself a little pedometer, Omron. Back then we didn't have the iPhones or Apple Watches that tracked our steps or Oura rings or anything. I got a little battery-powered pedometer, and I would track my steps. And it was hard enough just to walk to the bathroom off the couch. I was in a lot of pain. I was incredibly lightheaded and dizzy. I felt so weak. It felt like I just had a horrific flu all the time. And nobody knew what was wrong. And I wound up, a day before Harvard was starting, they were incredibly kind and lenient. I took a medical deferment. So I took the year off and spent the year, again, going to more and more doctors. Now, I'm going to pivot out of the medical journey for a moment because that's not the point, although I will do plenty of other episodes about the energetic roots of different physical illnesses, and I'm so passionate about that now as a medical intuitive and someone who understands that everything that is showing up somatically has an energetic, emotional root. But at the time, I did not see it that way. And at the time, I wanted someone to give me a pill or tell me what to do. So I went to some of the best doctors. I was really privileged in that my parents could afford to get me great care. And I'm also so blessed. I know that is not the case for everyone. And bit by bit, I started giving my power away to professionals in white coats who seemingly knew better, right? They're the doctor. They went to med school. They specialize in Lyme disease. They specialize in this, whatever it was. Let me trust them. And so from age 18 to 28, I would say I really lost and then fought and then lost and then fought for connection with my own intuitive knowing. I have to sneeze. What's coming through, I felt this like strong upsurge of energy in my nose that felt like I had to sneeze, but actually I didn't. It was an energetic wave reminding me I never actually lost connection with my intuition. So that was an improper, not precise use of language. What's more accurate is that I chose to abandon my intuition. I chose to give my power away, but I always knew. For example, when I finally made it to Harvard, I was in a motorized scooter, and I was a disabled girl, and I took the disability van to my classes rather than walking through Harvard Yard, and I had a PICC line, a central catheter in, and I was giving myself IV infusions in my single dorm room every day. I had a medical single. And I was really pathologized, and I was deep in this victim narrative, and I was also so depressed, right? I had been a dancer. Part of my identity was, academic all-star student, A++ student. I held that really tightly. Another aspect of myself that I held really tightly was I am a dancer. I'm a ballet and modern dancer. I am in a dance company. I had danced at Alvin Ailey and Lincoln Center, and my peers in my dance company were all going to conservatories. They were going to Juilliard, and I was just mesmerized, but I chose the academic route, which luckily I listened to my intuition on that, because around sophomore, junior year of high school, I really had to decide what I was prioritizing. Most of the other girls in my dance company were not taking AP classes, were not having hours and hours of homework every night. Some of them were even doing a couple hours of academic school and then going into the city and doing dance all day, private Pilates, private ballet training, all sorts of things that I did not do. And I prioritized academia. Anyway, the point is I now could no longer dance. I could barely walk. I couldn't even stand in the shower. I had to use a shower stool. And it was devastating to me. I felt like I was being robbed. Simultaneously, I lost all my friendships, pretty much. The boyfriend that I was dating at the time, my senior year of high school, was worried that I was contagious, so he broke up with me. My best friend at the time, who was my best friend all 4 years of high school, she went to Penn when I stayed home for, all the seniors went to college that year. Very few people took time off at my high school back in the day, circa 2007. And I took a medical deferment. I was home. My best friend went to college. She was having the time of her life, and we had a couple of phone calls, and I was deeply entrenched in victim consciousness. And after a few weeks, she said, listen, I feel too guilty, talking to you, knowing I'm having a great time, you're at home. I want to talk about boys and parties and how much I drank and my classes, and you're just talking about doctor's visits and your mom and all these things, and I can't do it. And so she broke up with me, and we never spoke again. Actually, we ran into each other once, I believe, 7 years later. But anyway, lost a lot of friendships, lost everything that was important to me, and lost my ability to go to Harvard. I had been pushing and pushing in school, and then I was the dream just slipped out of my fingers. I lost everything, it felt like, which is, again, not true, but that was my perception. So I was deeply, deeply depressed. And an antidepressant was recommended to me. So we're hearkening back to abandoning my intuition. And I had a deep sense in my vessel, And again, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not making any blanket claims about psychiatric pharmaceutical medication, although I will be doing plenty of episodes on that down the line. But we're starting with softball energy. We just want to ease y'all into the experience of Jillian Melissa. I'm just speaking to my journey, and if you take psychiatric medication and you feel that those pharmaceuticals serve you, I'm so grateful that you have access to something that supports your well-being. I'm speaking to my journey. I was depressed situationally in response to really challenging things that were happening to me, and I was struggling to shift my identity and be flexible and step out of victim consciousness into a more empowering perspective. And I'm noticing dog hair now. I was swaying Bubbles, my beautiful puppy, prior to recording this. So pardon the pup hair interlude rather. It was recommended to me to take an antidepressant. And every part of my body screamed, no, your brain doesn't want this, Jillian. Don't do it. But I was so depressed. And I got pressure from people. I'll just leave it there. And so I opted in. And that started, a decade-long journey of being on all different psych meds, because after a few years, Lexapro didn't work. So then we switched to Wellbutrin. And then every time something would happen, another breakup, a loss, we would just switch out the drug. So one moment where I really abandoned my intuition. Another moment I really abandoned my intuition was when I was put on prescription painkillers. So after graduating Harvard in 2013, I moved to Los Angeles and I started working in the entertainment industry. I was working at Lifetime Networks and I was super excited to be there. I had done an internship there the summer before and had the time of my life. Do you get it? Your life, your time. And I had also, the year that I had taken off, been obsessed with Lifetime original movies. So it felt like I was, fulfilling a dream. And let me help create television. Stories are really powerful. Media is powerful. And when I was so sick and alone on that couch, it was TV and film that really got me through a lot of that. Anyway, my body said absolutely not to Hollywood, and I will talk more about the spiritual entities and experiences that are tied up in Hollywood if those of you are interested in that, but again, not for today. I got very, very sick. I was vomiting for several days straight, went to Cedars-Sinai. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. Started having these crazy muscle spasms like Charlie horses that you have in your calves, those but all over my body. And again, nobody knew what was wrong. Maybe it's food poisoning, they said. Okay. And started traveling to different doctors. Again, nobody could solve it. Eventually, I had to leave the position. I couldn't work. And I moved back home to New Jersey and was taken to a local chronic pain management doctor. And he recommended, I think Oxy was the first one. It could have been Norco. It could have been Dilaudid. I don't really know. I'd have to check my records or ask my mother, although she probably doesn't remember either. I was put on prescription painkillers. Now, again, similarly, in the moment when this was recommended, immediate somatic body, no, Jillian, do not do this. Your body does not want this. But I got pressured by people. I was screaming all day long. My mother was desperately wanting to help me. And she's like, Jillian, you can't exist like this. You're in agony. And pressure was applied by lots of different forces. And I believe there were spiritual forces involved in that as well, outside of the human being, spiritual forces that were operating through the conduit of people. And that is something that I will talk about more and more on this channel. Part of why I take psychic development so seriously and shadow work and consciousness pruning, like we have to prune a tree, we also have to prune our psyche. I take that so seriously because there are very real spiritual forces. Whether you believe it or not doesn't matter. And I'm okay if you think it's kooky and crazy and you don't believe, but they really exist regardless of your belief. Now, if you're open and willing to accept this, then you can interact with these forces in such a way where they don't take control of your vessel and your mind and your life. A lot of people who have looping thoughts or say things that they're like, where did that come from? There are other forces at play besides your own brain. So anyway, I do believe there were dark forces involved, but I wound up succumbing, and I was in pain, and I was desperate to get out of pain, and I was being told by my physician that I was not being a cooperative team player. Team Jillian. Okay. I was not being cooperative. If I really actually wanted to get better and get out of pain, then I should do what the doctor's telling me. So I went on a variety of painkillers, and then one day a pharmaceutical rep from this company, Insys, came inside of the patient room. So she was there in the appointment with me, my mother, the doctor, and this, snazzy looking pharma rep, and she was slinging a drug called Subsys, which was a sublingual spray of fentanyl. I believe it was only approved to be used in palliative care in the last 4 to 6 weeks. I'll have to fact check. For those basically dying of cancer, already on around-the-clock opiate. So it was really just this spray that was meant to hit you with, prescription-grade heroin, fentanyl, the strongest fentanyl that had ever been made. And I was put on a fentanyl patch, so I had a transdermal fentanyl, so I had fentanyl going all day, and then I started taking these sublingual sprays. And again, my body, even though I was drugged up already on psych meds and now opioids, strong, heavy-duty narcotics, my body said, don't do this fentanyl. Don't do it, Jillian. And I expressed that, but again was pressured and again abandoned my intuition. That led to several years, obviously, of addiction, and wound up staging an intervention for myself, as most do, and flew my little booty off to Sierra Tucson many years later and, got off cold turkey, never looked back. I should say cold turkey after creating and devising an 8-month taper down with my doctor. I wound up going to that very same doctor and saying, not only am I not in less pain, but I am a shell of a human. I was collapsing in my chicken over dinner and waking up. And basically, I was a zombie. It's frightening. It's absolutely horrifying what happened to me. The fact that I'm alive is a miracle. I would also, steal the sprays. I wound up giving the sprays to my mother to dose out to me because I couldn't control myself. I just wanted to spray. And I was only supposed to have, 4 a day, then 5 a day, then 6 a day. They kept increasing my dose. But regardless, I wanted 1 billion a day. And it was all I could think about. All I could think about was, when am I going to get my next spray? And I would lie and cheat. I would go in and steal them. She would put them away in a locked thing. I would break the lock. I would take the spray, put it back in the cardboard, use double-side tape to tape it up. I was lying. I became a monster. I would do anything for those sprays. It's tragic. So just a moment of, I'm sorry to my mom and family and Patrick, my boyfriend at that time, and all those who loved me in that time. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Anyway, I started to feel my soul come back online in moments when I flew to rehab, in moments when I'm in the hospital unit of the rehab and they're recommending methadone to me and I say, no, I don't want any weird substitute version. Get me the fuck off this. I don't care how painful it is. And plenty of moments like that in my life where I started to reclaim my power. Whenever I did that, whenever I listened to my intuition, things got better. Whenever I abandoned my intuition, things got worse. When I listened to my intuition, advocated for it, and refused to be swayed, miracles happened. When I let myself be persuaded and I ignored my intuition or just put it away, things got dangerous for me. I had a whole era several years later where the psychiatric aspect of my disease experience heightened, and I will also talk about that more in subsequent episodes, but needless to say, I landed myself in 2 different inpatient psychiatric experiences and in one emergency room, or well, 2, the same emergency room, but 2 different times, emergency room psych holds. Now, I was not privy to the fact that there are cells in hospitals. It was, cement walls and a metal toilet jutting out of the wall and a metal cot, and felt like a prison cell. And in one of those, I was trapped for many days. I was stripped of my clothing. My glasses were taken away. A lot of things happened in there. My family didn't know where I was. I was begging to just make a phone call to let them know. And the tragic part was that I had reached out for help. I was having at the time what was a panic attack, but I thought something was very, very wrong. My heart was racing. I was on Adderall, again, medication I never should have been prescribed, and antidepressants, which led to a sort of manic break. Again, I think there were spiritual energies involved, something that I would love to talk about if there's interest. But I became entrenched after that experience in what I would call prisoner consciousness. So victim consciousness, I thought, was the lowest level of consciousness there is. And when I work with clients who are really stuck in victim consciousness, it's hard because you have to have a certain degree of inner spark of divinity, of soul remembrance to want to get better, to want to improve your life. If you always perceive yourself as the victim and the problem is always outside of you, it's very unlikely that you will make any sustainable change in your reality. But victim consciousness can get so low that it becomes what I call prisoner consciousness, where you're actually trapped in a cage and you don't know that you have the key. And because I was literally trapped in a cage and then experienced a lot of horrific abuse under the guise of psychiatric care, and of course, what's so unnerving, and I'd love to step into advocacy at some point in this space when I feel a little bit more ready for that, is that once you're in a psych ward, you're deemed crazy, right? You're certifiable. You're a lunatic. And these doctors get to prescribe, or nurses get to prescribe or give you medication at whim just for whatever they want. So as an example, I was really asking for my glasses to participate in a group because I couldn't read, but they were sharp and considered a weapon, and I was trying to advocate for my glasses. Oh, my puppy's crying for that. Or, it's okay, Bubbles, I'm not there anymore. I'm okay, Mama's almost finished. And anyway, any time that I advocated for myself, I was drugged. You can come here if you want to talk about it. When I reclaimed my power, miracles happened. That's the point. That's the point. And that's what I want to share with you today. I'm going to pause for 1 second and see if Bubbles wants to join us because he's very vocal. Introducing Bubbles. Hi, baby. Can I finish? So we'll wrap it up quickly. I know you want to touch the microphone. So this takes us, let's just travel a couple years ahead. I wind up attending a shamanic, holistic-based rehab in Sedona, technically Cornville, called The Sanctuary. And they did all sorts of weird things like calling on the directions and, it's okay, Mama's okay. My baby's upset hearing this. It's okay. I had gotten myself stuck in a loop that I belonged in a mental institution after the trauma that I had endured in the psych wards and the damage done to my brain. And it was only when I started tapping into soul and energy that I started to feel that dissipate. I, bit by bit, aligned with practitioners who could really help me, and I followed my intuition to find every single one of them. I was in New Jersey, and there was a workshop at a local yoga studio. A man named Justin Ritchie was teaching subtle energy, and I felt like I'm supposed to be there. And it was only for those doing yoga teacher training, but I called up and asked if I could audit and join, and they let me. And that was the first time in a very long time that I felt normal. I didn't feel like the psychiatric patient who was in day programs. You know, I spent, after my inpatient time, a lot of time in these IOPs, intensive outpatient programs, and PHPs, partial hospitalization programs, and I just considered myself a psychiatric patient. I was convinced that I belonged in a mental institution for life, which was devastating to me and my family. They knew me as the brilliant Harvard Jillian, and now I'm saying I should be committed and be a ward of the state, or maybe I need a conservatorship. And yeah, again, the camera did not like that experience. They did not like that. Those were lies, and that was a lot of darkness, but a lot of prisoner consciousness and a lot of distortion. But when I went to that subtle energy workshop in New Jersey that fateful day and met Justin Ritchie, I noticed I feel normal with you, and the things you're talking about the energy bodies, about external and extrinsic and internal and intrinsic validation, about the chakras, about the koshas, all of this makes sense to me. Do you work with people privately? And he did, and so I started working with him privately for several years, doing sort of consciousness counseling similar to therapy. But I had found for me that no therapist could really help me, that all the traditional therapeutic models did not support me. I also aligned with Reiki healers, different mediums. I remember I was living in Los Angeles, leaving the yin yoga class I often attended, and a woman with bright red hair and green eyes came walking out, asked if I was going to her Akashic Records group reading class. I had no idea what that meant. I was like, I know the word group and reading and what, Akashic who, what, and huh? And she was like, just come. And so I went, and it was a psychic channeling class where she was channeling for a group. People would ask her questions, and she would channel a response. And at the time, my degree was in medical anthropology. I found anthropology a fascinating lens. So I was really playing anthropologist. I was looking around the room, and I was noticing who is receiving benefit, if anyone. How are her words landing? Does she seem full of shit? Is she just getting ego validation by people being like, yes, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, what is going on here? And I was actually really impressed. And then she called on me, which I was not expecting because I didn't have my hand raised and I didn't have a question that I wanted a psychic counselor to advise me on. But her channeling was brilliant and it made sense to me. And she pulled me aside afterwards. And I thought I was in trouble because I was like, maybe she noticed that I was a skeptic, and I was just like looking around, and I don't know. I was definitely nervous at the time. And she asked me, how are you using your gifts to be of service? And I played coy, what gifts? But we both knew my gifts. And she said, I believe you're one of the most gifted mediums on the planet, and I would love to train you. And so I started training with her. And then I followed my intuition and started training with people that I really was inspired by, and started reading a lot, consuming a lot, and also doing my own channeling, learning about psychic development, learning about responsibility and integrity in the psychic space, learning about the overlap between intellect and intuition. How do we explore psychic development from a grounded way? What is spiritual science? What is real? What is ego and fantasy and projection? How do you hold space and integrity? All sorts of really fascinating inquiries bubbled up. And then I decided, or the universe kind of pushed my hand to launch this as a profession, as a vocation in 2020, in the heart of the pandemic. And the rest is history. And that work has evolved. It's been beautiful and such a blessing. I feel so grateful, and my life is incredible. I feel so healthy. I dance. I'm in a dance company now, so I'm back to that in a new, more embodied way. I am in love. I have a beautiful puppy. I have great friends. I have a grounded 3D life. I'm in a book club, but I also have a vibrant spiritual life. I take no psychiatric or pain medication. I've done a lot of healing. I'm no longer in the wheelchair. I, didn't speak a whole lot to that and my health journey in my 20s, but touched on it briefly. And so I've come home to my intuitive knowing, and I'm so grateful that I did because it saved my life. Like I said at the start, our intuition is the compass. It is the flashlight. It is guiding us home always to our soul, to what many in the New Age spiritual community would call our highest timeline. And it always knows best. And our intuition is also entrained to our subconscious. So in conjunction with intuitive development, what goes hand in hand, what is absolutely necessary is shadow work, is exploring your psyche, whether that's with a powerful, aligned therapist or someone like me, a consciousness counselor, someone who knows how to dive deep into those wounds and hold space. I am so grateful for my journey. I am so grateful that you chose to listen to it in fits and starts. I know it was all over the place, but I tried to give a chronological arc. My hope is that it activated something within you. I'm excited to continue to share with you as I'm guided. And like I said, bringing on those that I feel would offer medicine for your spirit, for your heart. My goal is to help as many humans as I can possibly reach in anchoring in unconditional love and compassion and grace. There's a lot of violence and trauma in this world. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of distortion, and I do believe there's a very real spiritual war between the light and the dark, and I am here to help anchor in more light. So with that, let's wrap for today. I invite you to ask your body what you'll need to integrate this transmission. It may have just felt like you were listening to someone share about their life, but you may have found that you were activated, poked, prodded, and that something may have stirred within you. So if it did, please ask your body what you need to integrate. And I hope to be in your ears, in your heart, in your eyesight, in your field again very, very soon. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to It's Time with Jillian Melissa. If you're feeling like it's time to leave that toxic relationship, launch that business, share your voice with the world, if you're feeling like it's time for whatever it probably is, so I invite you to trust your intuitive compass. And if you're feeling like it's time to connect with me, I invite you to follow me on Instagram at JillianMelissa_intuition. That's really the hub of all my content, and using the link in bio, my link tree, you can access links to book a private session with me. You can join my monthly membership community through Patreon. I post upcoming workshops, group channeling classes, intuitive guidance gatherings, and much more. So that's really the best way to stay connected with my energy. My hope is that you bestow love on all those who cross your path. And until we meet again, I love you.